Thank you, Joey. Appreciate it. We're going to call this work session to order for December the 14th, 2021. I'm going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Here.
Vice Mayor Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Hanson.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Here.
Alderman Brown.
Here.
Alderman Potts.
Here.
And Alderman Baggett.
Present.
Look like we got the full complement. Now's an opportunity for citizens to make comments that are not on the agenda. And the typical way we do that are speaker cards. You fill those out and provide those to me. I have no speaker cards, but I do know that there's a citizen-related comment by one of our aldermen. So Alderman Baggett, I'll recognize you.
Thank you. Spoke with, had some citizens reach out regarding something in Ward 4 related to the Amazon robots who have been deployed on sidewalks in the neighborhood out there. I think around 50 of them. And I wanted to take this time to converse as a board and hear a report from the city administrator regarding an update, and then to see, the spirit of this being we don't want to have a scooter type situation where they just get dropped, and is there a process involved and so forth.
Right, let me give you a little bit of an update on that. Originally, Amazon approached us last summer, actually summer before last, July of 2020, and operated a small pilot program essentially running from the Whole Foods off of McEwen into the Cheswick Farms neighborhood. And so that operated until probably about 2 months ago. They heard some complaints from residents and have suspended that service for now while they're working through any of those concerns. It may start back up again, but we gave them some latitude because we wanted to see and experiment with an innovative way to deliver, a way to do deliveries without putting vehicles on the road. So we are one of 3 areas in the country where they're working with this new technology. They're working in the Atlanta area and in the Seattle area as well. So we have allowed that and worked with that. They did meet with the West Haven neighborhood to talk about extending the service there. It is not operating in West Haven today. And we're not sure when it will. They're going to let us know. They're doing sort of an initial exploratory element there. Their only place they're operating in Franklin right now is a small operation in downtown where they're working from the Generations Church, and they are distributing probably 5 scouts a day going out. And essentially, they go out accompanied by an Amazon employee, which they call ambassadors, that go along with the equipment as it goes and makes deliveries. And then people are notified and they come out and they take their order from the unit. They're very much like kind of a large cooler on wheels, and they operate that way. So we've had some discussions with them and talked to them about how they're gaining feedback and learning from it. And the very concern you raised is we don't want this to turn into a scooter situation where they just get dumped, and they have to have a home base that they operate from. So they're not just, they're either delivering or they're back at their distribution point, either charging or being reloaded. So they don't just sit in the public areas. They go and either make a delivery or go back to their, what they call the host site, which is where they have the orders present, and they fill them in there. So we're still working with them. The state passed some legislation this last session to permit this type of delivery unless the local government cites a public safety concern. So, I think it's still something we are following very closely. We've asked for continuous communication in terms of any changes in service or desire to expand. And the meeting they had in West Haven was a preliminary discussion with the neighborhood to get some feedback, but also share that they were looking at doing that, providing that service in the neighborhood. So we're following it closely. Our attitude has been, let's work with it and see what we can learn, what they can learn, because if there are alternatives to keep off the streets and to provide services to people, we ought to explore it. But also, what kind of impact does it have on quality of life, and we want to be aware of that. They have a regular dedicated customer service component for any concerns folks have. They can, the cleanest way to do it is to send an email to park-delivery@amazon.com. And they will immediately follow up on any of those concerns. We have some other direct contact information if folks have concerns. We can also work directly with counterparts at Amazon to talk about what is going on and what concerns there are with it. But you know, we want to try to be open enough to innovation and learning, but also make sure we're staying abreast of it. And they are looking at this potential expansion, but they were not clear if and when they would proceed with West Haven. But they did have a neighborhood meeting a few weeks ago.
Eric,
So-
can I just ask you, so, you know, I brought this to you months ago, and we had a couple issues over there with Cheswick. So you're telling me, because I haven't heard anything back, that they suspended it?
They
in
suspended
that
it.
area?
Yeah, they are
Oh,
very
well,
sensitive
no
to
one-
complaints. And when
Okay.
they heard any complaints, they said,
Wow.
we're going to suspend it until we have those answered. We reached out to
Okay.
them to try to give them,
So it's
they did
total.
not get contacts directly, but we did, and we
Yeah.
were sharing those
Right.
with them, and they'll engage in that dialogue, and we'll see if they decide to
Yeah.
start it back up or work with that. So that's all
the
part
call-
of the process.
Yeah, all the calls I got were things like that, so, but I did not know they had suspended it
Yep.
yet, so.
They
okay,
made that
thank-
decision.
Thanks.
Okay, moving
else?
on. We're now going to go to item number 1, which is a presentation to announce the craziness of the mayor that he's wearing ears. Oh, I'm sorry. Presentation to announce the private fundraising portion for the first inclusive playground called LEG's Dream World in January of 2022. So, they look good on me, I know.
It's a
But,
nice look, yeah.
I know.
Let me,
Tori Barney-
start it out.
Sure, go ahead.
As you know, progress is continuing. Tori's going to come up here too. Progress is continuing with the Southeast Park. Major infrastructure is going in place. The bridge is being put in place, and you may have seen some video just in the last week of some of that work. So we're really excited to get access to that park site. And one of the really headline elements of that new park is our first all-inclusive playground. And so that's something that has taken a really to the community's heart. There's been a partnership throughout. Friends of Franklin Parks has been a partner with the city in reaching out to the community and others to talk about what this can be. And we're excited to launch tonight and talk to you tonight about the campaign to get private partners involved in this project with us. So Mark is stepping in for Lisa, who can't be here tonight, and talk a little bit about what to expect and what's coming forward. And Tori's going to be working hard in the community to develop those partnerships, and I want them both to have a little time with you tonight to talk about what's to come.
Thank you, Eric. So there's
You like
been
to
a,
wear the ears?
if I'm required to, sir.
Up to you, Mark.
All right. Thank you. I know. So, thrilled tonight to announce the. I'm gonna march on.
Oh, yeah.
I can't.
Right up there.
Oh. So
This is a highlight of a public service career right here, right in front of you.
I get roped into all kinds of things, so it's okay. Oh yeah. The Grease Busters, yes. So really thrilled tonight to announce really kind of the kickoff in January for the private fundraising campaign that Tori and a number of other folks have been working really hard on. We have a packet that has been developed that we'd like to kind of run through pieces of that tonight. And this is going to be one of the tools that we use to help secure partners in raising funds for this fantastic project. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I'd like to read just a portion of oh, okay. Yeah, I'll do that. That'd be easier. So I'd like to read a portion of LEG's story. It's a wonderful story. And really, Franklin's first inclusive park being named after Elliott is it's wonderful. So I'm going to read this. I'll try not to get choked up, but here we go. So Franklin's first inclusive park will be named in honor of Elliot Grace Castro, who passed away at the age of 4 in September 2019. Lovingly known as Ellie G, she was the granddaughter of Franklin Alderman Brandy Blanton and was born with the very rare terminal form of dwarfism called rhizomelic chondrodysplasia punctata, RCDP. During her brief life, she proved to be an example of courage, strength, and joy to all who had the privilege to know her or know of her. I'm going to leave it at that because we can all read the rest. It's a wonderful story, sad, but I'm thrilled that we have the opportunity to honor her with this park. If we can go to the next slide, please. I'll just use this if you don't mind. So the goal here is we want a playground for all, people with all different abilities. We don't have that in large form, at least here in the city of Franklin. And we think that this 3-acre park will go a long way towards reaching out to that piece of the community that is really, we'd like to provide better service to. Next slide, please. So as you know, the inclusive playground is going in the southeast municipal complex right off of Carruthers. As I mentioned earlier, it's a 3-acre park, which is about 4 to 6 times larger than Tinkerbell Playground, just to give you an idea. So it's a substantial facility. Phase 1 is going to include the majority of the play structures, pavilion, shade structures, and then there's going to be a future phase that comes along after that. We'll also have accessible restrooms and with built-in baby changing tables to accommodate needs of this community. So right now, the estimated cost, I forget that I keep wearing these ears, my apologies. So the estimated cost for this initial phase is about $3 million. Friends of Franklin Parks is taking on a huge chunk of that. So big thanks to them in working with the private community to raise $1.5 million to help fund this really awesome project. So Tori, I don't know if you want to kind of step through the different. You want to go?
Okay,
Okay. Does that work?
sure. This
Can we go 2 more slides? There we go.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity I knew this was coming, to talk to you more about this playground. This has been visioned for years and years and years. Franklin Tomorrow has led vision trips to different inclusive playgrounds and rallied the community and kept it on the forefront of everyone's mind. And when this new park came online, it was time for everybody to get together and collaborate and really plan out how this would look and how we would fund it. And the city of Franklin has budgeted money and said we need X amount of dollars to make this happen, and we are just honored to be part of that. This is a collaborative effort by the community. Friends of Franklin Parks is committed to the 1.5 to fundraise with these community partners. And if you look through the packet, you can see they're listed. It's Franklin Tomorrow, it's City of Franklin, it is Leadership Franklin, and numerous other partners that have already expressed interest since we've been talking about it for 2 years. But it's happening. So we have an amazing committee that's continued these conversations, and you can see the committee list inside the packet. And we have worked on a marketing packet. We have worked on sponsorship opportunities and strategies, what we think would work in this community. There's naming right opportunities, and all the way down to a visioned, like the Serengeti Tree of Life. Then when you come in the pavilion, you'll see this tree, and if you could give $100 because you want to be a part of it, you'll have a leaf there that represents, I was a part of this project. If you could give $5, that's okay. This project is for everybody to be a part of. All of us have started having conversations with groups. I've had conversations with some school groups, even Boys and Girls Club, about let's get the whole entire community engaged. And we feel like this packet is going to get us across the finish line. And so if you look on the first page, just really quickly, It's really cutely named after all the safari animals that would be in this park, and you'll see represented. So anyone here, feel free to raise your hand. But if you would like to be the presenting sponsor at 500,000, the naming right, there's that opportunity. We'd be happy to talk to you. And it goes from 250. Let me get my glasses. Excuse me. 500 to 250. You can be a lion sponsor, giraffe, elephant, hippo, zebra, toucan, tortoise, and then you could sponsor a leaf. But we vetted this through Parks Department and this committee, and tried to outline the benefits and naming rights and what you would get, and it would be consistent with what the city's allowed in the past as well. We already have a text-to-give program set up. We have a QR code. We kind of buried it on the back of FOFP website under projects because it wasn't going to launch till January. But Parks went and put a great little float in the Christmas parade, and Brandy said they need to give, and I'm like, we created it. Let's go ahead. Let's put it on the page. And I'm very, very proud to say that FOFP has committed that every dollar donated, 100% goes in restricted fund. And in nonprofits, there are other expenses that go along, but 100% is committed. So if you gave $5 in restricted fund. So that's how committed we are, and we're all friends. We're all friends of this project. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
Thank you, Tori. I just wanted to point out, if you came in through the back way, out in the lobby out here, there's the banner that was in the parade, and you'll see the QR code on there. So feel free to go out and give it a shot. So.
And I also probably need to add one more thing, that you all should have received an invitation. This will be officially launched on January 18th. That's a Tuesday at 3 p.m. And the city and the officials and Eric and the mayor hopefully will all be there to kick it off. And we may have some exciting announcements already lined up. I don't know. Well, everybody should work on this before we get there. But it's really just to share with the community and let them know how they can give. And the Parks Department has come up with some amazing ideas. All their fun kids' activities during the summer, set up banner and a tent with crafts so kids can do some really creative things and also learn about the inclusive playground.
I just love the look of this. This is just amazing, and it's such an honor, I know, for Brandy and her family to have this, but this is amazing for the community. But I know a lot of times when developers present ideas, they present a placeholder picture. I'm hoping and praying this is not a placeholder picture. I'm hoping and praying that the greens, the purples, the colors we see here are actually going to happen, because it, just looking at that brings joy. It's just like a place that pulls you in and you say, I want to be there, because it just looks great. So I don't know about that, but
The way these are presented to you are very deliberate. These are the colors we're
Good.
going with.
well, it'll really stand out. It will, when children drive, when parents and people drive their children up to this, and the children see this, they're going to get excited just to see the colors and everything, because kids respond to colors and they respond to shapes and everything, and I think this has been very well done.
So, obviously, I would be remiss if I didn't comment in some way. I definitely, personal aside, I think, and I'm glad you brought up Franklin Tomorrow, because this is something the county, Franklin Tomorrow, so many different nonprofit leaders, we met about this. Mindy, what did we decide, 8 years ago? Is how long this discussion's been going on. And obviously, it was way before special needs touched my life. And I think for a lot of people, I just want to draw the comparison that obviously it is going to be a destination for families who have children with special needs, so that they can ambulate and participate in a way that they can on a traditional playground. But aside from that, it's going to be, older people, younger people. It is literally designed as a playground for all. and all is as exclusive as you can spread your arms wide. And I think because when we first started talking about this, we didn't have the opportunity to even discuss the Southeast Park, which will someday have a much better name than that. This will be a destination for people outside of Franklin. And I know that it's become a very, I don't even want to use the word popular, it's become the right thing to do in so many other cities to provide this amenity. But I will tell you, in true Franklin fashion, ours is going to be greenfield development. Makes a whole big difference, but it's going to be quite amazing. And the opportunity to have the pavilion and the restrooms and even the spaces for people to gather, you have to consider so many factors when you're dealing with special needs, whether it's, sensitivity to sun, which means the shades are important, or even the opportunity to get under the pavilion because of different things. At one point, and the tree, of course, was always Ellie's logo, so I'm so glad that's there. I had wanted us to have a kind of like, for those of you who remember the Keebler elves, I think they're probably still around somewhere. Even a door underneath that for children who have sensory issues, who need a place to go where it's dark and calm, and we're going to figure out all those things. But personally, as I wear these giraffe headband and I have the tail on too, people told us a lot when Elliot was born that she was Franklin's baby, and it's all sweet and kind. You're like, oh, bless your heart, that's great. But it has really, I get it now. So many people supported her, supported us, loved us. I sat in this room many times in tears over different things that we were going through that was shared with the community. So you talk about an incredible honor, not only for her parents, but for her siblings to grow up and look beyond the pictures in their home and see, much like I said about Charles Sargent the other day, there's no comparison here, but Elliot was a really big deal. And it's a huge honor for our family, but it's a bigger win for our community because it's just awesome. So thank you, Friends of Franklin Parks, for carrying the baton, and the city of Franklin for always just being right on that cutting edge. So thank you.
Item number 2, more good news. Consideration of Resolution 2021-172, a resolution authorizing and directing the Industrial Development Board of the City of Franklin to prepay its full taxable increment revenue refunding bonds Series 2015A variable rate for the FY ending June 30th, 2022. I don't mind
This is
having
the-
a long thing like that for that.
This is the long-awaited retirement of the TIF bonds, and Christine will take you through the details. We talked about it a week or so ago at Budget and Finance, and it's on tonight for voting so that we can move forward with this. But I'll let Christine walk through the details, but it's an important milestone as well.
Well, first of all, it's not fair to be right after the first item on this agenda, so it's not fair to have me have some tears when I'm talking about debt. So, but no, this is something that we're excited to bring back to the board, to the full board tonight. At the last Budget and Finance Committee, we spent a little time going through some of the history, but we do have a tax increment financing loan that was issued in 2015 as a refinancing from 2005. For the last 4 years, this board has authorized repaying additional principal on the loan, and those monies were dedicated from property taxes in that tax increment financing district that were above and beyond the required debt service payments. This board went ahead and prepaid principal, and we're now here to ask you, a little over 3 years early, to authorize in this resolution 2021-172 to allow staff to take the steps necessary to pay the loan in full. We will need to allow the tax increment district to remain for another year for accounting purposes. In the early years of the 2005 loan, the general fund for the city did advance debt service to the lender, and that is required for accounting purposes to repay. It is a liability on our receivable on our books is $2.3 million. But in essence, we will be reverting back to the property taxes within that district will become regular property taxes of the city, and then the tax increment district will fold away at that time. But the first step is to ask your permission later on tonight to approve prepaying the 2015 loan in full. Be glad to answer any questions, or certainly we have committee members who've heard this for many years.
Alderman Peterson and Alderman Barnhill, y'all have been stalwarts on the Finance Committee. I recognize either one of you.
Well, it's certainly good news that we are able to, that the property taxes increased enough to where we could prepay and refinance the TIF, this particular loan. The loan was for Nissan. The loan was in 2005. And so for us to be able to prepay and save the taxpayer the money that we're saving is certainly an accomplishment on our part, and it's certainly an accomplishment on the collection of the property taxes and whatever we are going through. So I commend you for it. I thank you for it. And the committee thanks you for it.
And just to, thank you, just to say, we borrowed the money, and then the taxes from the area around it, as they increased so much, because there, needless to say, around where Nissan is, it did not look like it does now. But the property taxes from them were just to pay the money back that we had used to borrow, I guess, to buy the property. Is that right? But anyway, and then right after that happened, we had, the downturn in the economy about 2008 and 9 and everything, and so the city had forwarded money to pay the kind of the interest on the loan for a while there. But really, this is wonderful. I mean, well, first of all, to get Nissan, first of all, but secondly, to have all of this around that area, and now all those property taxes will just go into the general fund, I guess. So after all this is over, but great that we were able to pay it off early.
Alderman Berger.
I remember in 2005 when I was elected, 3 weeks later, it was even 2 weeks later, we were all down in the chambers with the governor for this announcement. And then we came back and we talked about this. So it's a big deal, real big deal. And it's amazing that it's rolling off so soon. But because of all the economic development, we're able to reap that back. My question is, when will we start seeing the taxes roll in?
In a year.
Well, we're making this recommendation, of course, in advance of all the property taxes for this year being collected by the county trustee. We are referencing that this year the billed taxes in the tax increment financing district are just right over $2.6 million. So that has been billed, and that is due by the end of February. However, as you may have seen in the background, the payoff amount's just under $800,000. So cash flow wise, I feel comfortable going ahead and recommending moving forward with the payoff. But those monies collected by the county trustee will be in our hands, fairly soon. By the certainly vast majority of people pay their property taxes by the end of February, and our county trustee does a great job at collecting. So once those monies are collected, we do have those accounting entries. We'll have to we'll actually repay ourselves somewhat in fiscal 22, the $2.3 million that we owe the general fund. I'd say probably around $900,000. We'll be reducing that receivable, and then the remainder will be collected in the next fiscal year. But at that point, it really is an accounting exercise because we're repaying ourselves from where we paid the debt service in those early years. So we do have to keep the mechanics open another year, but it will be available for general government uses really after we get this loan paid off.
So you start to see revenue, but you'll fully have it back on the rolls, if you will, for the general fund in the following fiscal year. But we talk about taxes, but it's really about investment. It's the investment that has happened in that area that has generated this increment, that has paid off this debt that was issued to facilitate significant economic development. So it's great to see, and we're thrilled to be at this stage and excited to move forward.
Okay, item 3, Resolution 2021-174 to amend the investment assumption rate of the City of Franklin employees' pension plan.
And just a quick word of background. Of course, the City of Franklin has 2 employee pension plans that we administer. There's a plan that we refer to as the closed plan. It's a single employer plan that is administered by the City of Franklin, a closed city employer, a single employer plan, and that was for employees that were full-time employees that were hired before end of December of 2016. All of the employees hired in the almost last 5 years, those employees are members of the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, which is a multiple employer pension plan that is administered by the state of Tennessee. What we are bringing to you today is a resolution that addresses a requirement for the closed pension plan, because even though it's a single employer plan, there are still rules by the state of Tennessee over us because we are a government pension plan. And we received notification formally in the first part of November from the state of Tennessee that the state of Tennessee's TCRS, Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System Board, had reduced the interest rate assumption that would be used for actuarial purposes for the state plan. And they reduced by 0.5%, 50 basis points, from 7.25% down to 6.75%. And that's certainly important to us on our open plan because we fall under those rules, but it's also important to us on our closed plan because there is a state law that says that our plan may not be more than 0.5% or 50 basis points higher than the state of Tennessee's plan. And we were already on a path to being at 7% in 2022. We actually, this board in 2018 approved a plan of reducing that interest rate assumption by 10 basis points a year over a 5-year period to get down to 7%. There has been talk for several years that the state would reduce the interest rate assumption on the state plan. So we aren't entirely surprised that the state made this move. However, they did make a move that was significant to move 50 basis points. And so we did discuss with our pension committee on December 6th, and the staff has made a recommendation. Alderman Barnhill and Mayor Moore are part of the employee pension committee. We did make a recommendation to continue to decrease the interest rate assumption on our closed plan by 10 basis points until we get to 6.5%. That will continue to make incremental declines in that interest rate assumption. And so while it may sound like a theoretical rate, there will be a cash implication upon our budgets by continuing to reduce that interest rate assumption. That we did ask our actuary to run an analysis of if given the situation at that point in time of our last study, what would reducing another 10 basis points have required us to pay as an employer contribution to the closed pension plan. And it would have increased our contribution, city's contribution, by about $230,000. So there is an implication that is a budget implication to reducing that in interest rate assumption. However, we like being slightly less than the state, because if they ever do in the future reduce from 6.75, we will already be we will be below them by 25 basis points, and that gives us a little bit more conservatism. Certainly, the intention of reducing the interest rate assumption is to be a well-funded pension plan, and both our closed and our open plans are well-funded pension plans. But we do recommend that we continue to reduce that interest rate assumption by 10 basis points per year, so that we can grow into that lower interest rate assumption of 6.5% in 2027.
And we've incorporated this over the last 4 years in our budgets. It's worked quite well, puts us in a better place in terms of those investment return assumptions. So it heightens our conservatism in managing the pension fund and has been really manageable in the budget overall. So I think just continuing this on further makes a lot of sense, and we're very comfortable with it. The Pension Committee met last Monday and voted in favor of this adjustment as well. So we have this on your agenda tonight. Well, we'll have it on in January for final approval. I apologize. And so that'll put us in a good place to start planning for that in future budgets.
And I would like to just point out also, the second page of the resolution that's to this item shows you the history of the investment rate assumption for the closed pension plan. It is interesting history that went back 25 years. 2002 was 8%, and we're recommending that by 2027 we'd be at 6.5%. So this is the trend of well-managed pension plans, is to over time decrease that interest rate assumption, and we have done that in a gradual fashion.
Item
Mayor.
4, go ahead.
Yeah. First off, I just want to say that what you just described is accurate, that we did what we did at the pension plan. I think the one maybe surprise was the 50 basis points reduction at one time by the state, because we have not seen that, that I can remember, we've not seen that before. But I think it's incumbent upon us to understand and I think it's extremely important to be less than the state's assumption rate. I don't think we want to be there. And here's what it basically does. If you hit a period where the economic growth is not as great, and you've got your assumption rates at 8%, you've got a real budgeting problem. If your revenues drop off to where you're not covering what you need to be covering, and that's not earning 8%. So when we do what we do, that's a conservative approach to cover any future economic downturns in the economy. And it allows us then to be on the front end of financing the closed pension plan rather than trying to catch up on the back end.
Do you want to make a comment, Alderman Peterson?
I did want to say that, what was it, 5 years ago, the city decided to go into the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. And I think that is a very good idea, first of all, not just because I'm a part of that, in terms of getting retirement from it. But the other thing is, the state of Tennessee is probably one of the best in the nation for having their retirement fund and pensions paid for, whereas you hear about other states and cities both, just being that they just really are in terrible shape on that. But the state of Tennessee is truly one of the very top ones in the nation.
The other thing I'd note is TCRS is helping us administer the closed plan as well. So it's a partnership that we have found really successful. They do a really good job. The cost to administer has been a savings to us, and it takes a burden off of staff. I mean, we're still engaged. You can see Christine and HR are very engaged in that as well. But it has been a really successful move, both for our newer employees that get on the system, but also managing the closed system efficiently. And I agree with staying in line with this, and staying a little bit below where they are is probably a good place to be.
One more comment. Eric, when we did what we did, and the savings that we had, those savings were based upon managers that we were engaged with to manage certain portions of the fund in which we had investments. When we went to TCRS, we were able to not have to have those. And specifically, I'm thinking it was like, what, $600,000-$700,000? Are we talking about that?
It's something like $500,000.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, about savings there. So you look at that as really turning back into helping us manage budgetarily what we need to put in if it costs us less to manage, because we're part of a larger system, and those same managing costs get spread out over a much larger group as opposed to being a relatively small city pension plan. So it's worked on all levels, and as Alderman Peterson said, that it is one of the best run pension systems in the country. So you've got expertise at a lower cost is kind of hard to beat. So it's been a successful move.
Item 4, City of Franklin Contract 2021-0332, professional services agreement with Hazen and Sawyer for the design of water line improvements in the downtown area in the amount of $307,316.
Hi there. So this is a contract with Hazen, who has done most of our modeling work, our water distribution system modeling work, to upgrade some of the infrastructure that's in the downtown area. It's as you can see from the map, that's on the screen and then in the packet as well. It's just aging infrastructure that has not been easy to replace. You know, we found they're highly traveled streets, Lewisburg, 4th Avenue right there. So we're looking to embark upon that. The design is going to be, so we have it on both agendas tonight to vote, so we can get the designer, Hazen, working as quickly as we can, started on the survey. So we've already got the survey in queue. They're going to look to do the design in about 6 months, so we can try and make the summer season with construction. It's going to be quick, and so we're going to look at the potential to phase this to kind of ease maintenance of traffic operations and how we can, work with engineering to get all that in a sequential order to, to limit the pain that this is going to be, obviously.
Okay.
Go ahead, Alderman Brown.
Two questions. One is, relative to downtown, we have Church Street work that's going to come. How does all that sequence together in terms of all these projects that are sort of downtown?
So do you mean that the Church Street work that's occurring with City Hall?
Yeah. No. The road improvements that are coming and all that.
That's a little further out.
A little further out,
This is
but
a
not as big a
shorter-term
deal.
project
Okay.
that we can get in ahead of that
Okay.
larger project, quite frankly. The other piece of this, and just a little bit of a preview of what's coming later, we believe this is a good candidate for some of the American Recovery Funds. It kind of fits nicely into the water sewer infrastructure component of that plan. So that piece helps as well. But it's one we can do kind of discreetly in that component in a shorter period of time. So that's why we're looking to expedite this design so that it can get in the next heavy construction season.
Could we see the part where it shows the improvement, A, B, C, D? I think that's on the,
That's in the actual,
uh-huh.
I'm not sure.
It's
who's
the
controlling it. It's in the
image,
actual
10 out of
PSA.
16. Yeah.
So just a second question, which counters your do this quick and do this easy. We're going to create the disruption. We're going to go in there. Do we just deal with the water line, or are we going to address other utilities? Are we going to address other opportunities while we're breaking ground and going through that work?
So right now, the water line is not necessarily in, the sewer line is going to be in traffic. Yeah. And so it's not, we think that those are, the issues with that is easily fixable either through CIPP lining or some other sorts. So that's our intent. The water lines are on the, kind of on the sides of roads, that would be easy to get quick.
But if you're looking at burying electric utilities and those kind of things, that is a significant undertaking and a huge price tag. So you got to kind of pick your battle and focus on the priority here and what can be funded within this component, and that's what we're focused on right now, is addressing that piece.
Go ahead, Alderman Hanson.
Does this also address the issue that happened with like the Anderson home where there was not enough water pressure to pump water up the hill? Is that going to be that area, or is this just a water line?
This will improve water pressure and flow throughout this area. I do want to note that this area has always met and surpassed the requirements for flow and pressure in the area. So it was not substandard, but it is an aging infrastructure, so it needs to be improved. But it met, and that very unfortunate fire was fully involved before our fire crews even got there. So there's sometimes a perception that somehow the water is why that happened. It is not. And it meets and exceeds the standards that are expected for fire flow by state standards and our own standards. So this will certainly improve it. It is aging infrastructure, so it'll be a huge improvement, and we're providing some looping where we don't have it.
Indeed.
So overall, it's going to be a great improvement. But And this is something we've been looking at for some time, so that is a part of that discussion, but I just wanted to clarify that component.
Are you through? Or you got more to talk about?
No, the other thing I wanted to point out was that improvement B, it goes, so it's a new line, and that goes across the old O'More College. And so that is under development, obviously, under, the development review and that sort of process. So this improvement would be coupled with that, and then, the easement dedicated and those sorts of costs with an agreement.
Any other questions? Ready to move on? Item 5, change order 1 to City of Franklin Contract 2018-0282, a construction contract with Civil Constructors LLC for the State Route 96 West Multi-Use Trail Phases 1 and 2 project for a time extension of 10 days and a cost increase not to exceed $34,555.
So just a 10-day time increase. We had some water lines that needed to be extended and changes based on what the water department wanted. We also had to relocate some school zone signs. So we're going to give them 10 days. The project ends January 14th. Unfortunately, you can't pave in the wintertime. So chances are right now we're looking to try to get as much done as we can, and then you'll probably see lack of work happening until those asphalt plants open up. But we'll generally stop the clock once they get to that point, and then pick the clock back up once it warms up. But they're doing good. They're making good progress out there, and Civil's doing a great job. So happy to answer any questions.
Don't think of this as, you generally don't think of this as paving season, though. You definitely don't think
This is
of
going
it.
to, yeah, I think we're going to get out of paving season, unfortunately.
Item 6, Amendment 1 to the City of Franklin Contract Number 2020-0133, a road impact fee reimbursement agreement with Franklin Capital Investment LLC related to improvements at Vintage at Watson Glen.
This is a simple name change. This is an agreement that's already exists, and the entity is changing names.
Item 7, Resolution 2021-170, resolution adopt the historic wayfinding guidelines.
We've got Amanda and Mr. Buckner here to talk about it, so we even got a visual aid, so.
To be revealed.
Tell these new aldermen who you are, make sure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Rose. I'm the Preservation Planner in the Planning and Sustainability Department, and I'm really excited to be here today. I also have with me Rich Buckner, who is the Vice Chair of the Civil War Historical Commission and the Chair of the Wayfinding Sign Subcommittee, who's been working for the last 2.5 years to bring this proposal to you today. You want to take it over?
Yeah. Okay. We're here now. All right. Okay, you want to go to slide 2? Who we are. We are a subcommittee of the Civil War Historic Commission. It consists of citizen volunteers that include Steve Bacon, who is from Harpeth Square, Rachel Finch with the Heritage Foundation, Pam Lewis, who is a former alderman in Tennessee Preservation Trust, Mary Pierce, who I don't think I need to introduce, but is a zoning commissioner and was the 30-year director of the Heritage Foundation, Bob Ravenar, who is very active with Rotary, Megan Weisinger with the Williamson County Visitors Bureau, Amanda Rose, who has been very active with us with the city planning department, and I've been the chief pest in trying to keep this train on the track. These are all members of the subcommittee, and those that are here, I'd like you to stand up, please. As you see, this subcommittee was very well suited in their expertise with regard to wayfinding for historical sites. We had a continual support and guidance from the entire commission all through the, as Amanda said, 2.5 years that we were working. And so those members of the Civil War Commission, please stand if you haven't already. So. Thank you. I want to thank all the members of the commission and the subcommittee for all the support that they gave us with this whole thing. Let me tell you what we are endeavoring to do. The effort was started in 2017 with Dr. Sam Gant and Sam Huffman, who were both with Save the Franklin Battlefield. They went out and photographed and documented and put an inventory together of every historical sign we had in the city. This helped the commission at that time to see the disparity in what we had with our signage. And that led to us forming a subcommittee to develop a program with the following objectives. The wayfinding needed to be consistent, it needed to be simplistic, aesthetic, and economical, it needed to be accurate, and it needed to be expandable. That is the mission that we work with throughout the entire planning on this program. The Historical Wayfinding Program is for the entire city of Franklin, all major roads, all historic sites. These are the sites that have a connection to the Battle of Franklin, to the Civil War, and that welcome visitors. What you see in front of you is we are expanding the program to include now 12 sites in the city of Franklin. We previously only directed visitors to 4 sites: Carter House, Lotes House, Carnton, and Fort Granger. So we're tripling the number of sites that we have wayfinding to. What's really important with this is that as we develop new sites, and they are developing as we speak, this program is designed to be expandable to pick up those new sites. Next slide. Not only are we expanding the number of sites, but we're also including all major routes of travel inside the city. This includes signs on 11 different routes, which is nearly double the previous 6 routes that we had signs currently. And then, of course, we got signs on I-65 as well. One of the things we've added was a sign at the city limits when you come in on every road, major road, that says Historic District X number of miles. And what's important for us with that is it tells our neighboring cities, our current visitors, and our current residents, and certainly visitors, that the Historic District of Franklin, which is our center, and our wonderful downtown, is not far away. And certainly downtown Franklin, which is a historical site in itself, is in the proximity of all the rest of the historic sites that we have in town. Amanda?
So another thing to mention, to speak to what Rich just said, is that our Convention and Visitors Bureau has informed us that when people know that a historic district is close by, they're more likely to visit that. There have been a lot of times that you and I have driven down interstates and seen a sign, just a small one that says, historic neighborhood, historic district, and it will pique your attention, whereas otherwise you wouldn't know, and you may not stop there. So we're really excited about offering that to you. As for the timing, that is entirely up to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We would really appreciate your support on this, but we have went ahead and prioritized based on 3 levels: high priority, medium, low priority, not removing existing signs until they are to be replaced at your guidance. As far as why, I think Rich covered that really well. We are a progressive community, and we are a fabulous community, and we've all been to places that have this type of signage. We deserve this type of signage. Puts our best foot forward. It's cohesive. It is inclusive. It's branded well, aesthetically pleasing, and most importantly, accurate. Right now, our signage doesn't meet the requirements of the state for guide signage. So this would get us in compliance with that, and everything look very similar. Rich?
How did this all come about? Well, the subcommittee were all citizen volunteers, and they work with planning staff for, as Amanda said, for 2 years plus in analyzing and developing what you will see today. It consists of 94 new historical wayfinding signs in the city of Franklin on 12 sites on 11 routes. Currently, there are 40 historic wayfinding signs for just 4 sites on 6 routes. So you see, we're actually improving the whole program by being really better planned and better organized in how we put wayfinding together. That's triple the number of sites on double the amount of roads. This improves and enhances the citizen and the visitor experience. It creates a brand mark for historic sites in Franklin. It meets all traffic standards, and that's really important to us. We learned a lot with the engineering department all through this process that if a sign is too cluttered, people have a tendency to slow down, and that creates accidents. So we wanted to create a sign that met all traffic standards so that it was really easy to read them as you were driving through the city. And it also broadens the scope to include, as I said, 11 major sites, 11 major routes, excuse me. Next slide. This includes 12 current historic sites that welcome guests today. It educates and promotes the Fuller story. It meets all traffic standards, as I said, and creates a program that's economical, sustainable, and expandable. You ready? What you see in front of you is an example of what exists today. Notice the inconsistency of style, color, and message. Our proposal to you is this.
I feel like Vanna White.
She is Vanna White.
This is the actual size. So this is 36 by 36, and this would be what we would propose at all the locations that we're outlining to you today.
Hold it up. As Amanda said, it's a 36 by 36 sign. Now, it looks big in this room, but I assure you, it doesn't look big when you're driving down the road. It is a custom brown color that gives an identity to the program, but it's in the brown family, so it's synonymous with historic sites. And we also are providing a provision in the program to give direction to the visitor center with blue signs underneath that guide people to the visitor center. There'll be 30 different sites. 30 of these signs will have a visitor center direction underneath them. What you see here is an example of a sign that will be on Main Street as you're heading toward 5 Points. Imagine sitting at the traffic light in front of the Franklin Theater. You'd look up and you'd see it's that sign there, but this is an example of what it would look like as it's mounted. The plan document shows 2 other example signs, one for Carnton and the other for Carter House and Lotes House. Amanda?
So in order to really collect all this information, we created what's called a story map. It's interactive, and it allows us to document the various locations that we're proposing new signs, the locations of signs we're proposing to remove or to replace. And it's a nice little repository tool that the IT department introduced to me. So I want to give a shout out especially to Andrew Southern for helping build this. But I want to show you how it works. So you can see that there's various legend colors. A new sign that might be proposed, for example, is here. You can click on it and it will tell you, let's see, this is not the best one. We'll click one that you can see a little better. It will tell you the location, which is at Mac Hatcher approaching Franklin Road, that the sign should say to go straight to go to Carnton, to go right to go to the Historic District, and go right to Civil War sites. Once we get further into Central Franklin, that's when we split up Civil War sites term to be more specific to sites because we are following some guidance from engineering and the state documents to limiting the number of lines that we put on each sign. It also says if we want a notation for the visitor center and also our recommendation for prioritization if that were to be the case, that this is phased over time. And this is a publicly accessible map that we're happy to share with anyone.
The beauty of this map, it actually helps engineering and the traffic department in where to specifically place each sign as we get to that stage. Allow me to summarize the program, if you will. As I've said a couple of times, 94 historical wayfinding signs on 12 sites, for 12 sites on 11 different routes. Once again, we have currently 40 signs on for 4 sites on 6 routes. That's triple the number of sites and double the number of routes. The estimated cost is $45,000. It is proposed to be added to the hotel motel tax fund. This program provides a simple and thorough experience for either the resident or the visitor that embraces the fuller story, which is something we all strive for. It's a new brand mark that presents a program that promotes the city of Franklin and its forward-thinking approach as an all-American city. And allow me to just personally tell you, my wife and I are very fortunate. We get to travel a lot, and we do travel a lot, and we do a lot of automobile travel. And we go to small towns and small cities like Franklin all over the country. And when we pull into a town that has made the effort to rebuild its streetscapes and put together wayfinding programs and everything else, it gives us a very welcoming feeling. It gives us the feeling that it's a town that really is looking to the future. You know, we live in a world of online and impersonal type communication and that type of thing. And we think it's intuitively obvious when a city makes the effort to improve itself. We know on the commission, we fully endorsed the idea of putting this program together because it is the right thing to do for the city of Franklin. And so thank you all for your attention. And Amanda and I are open for comments, questions, anything.
Alderman Brown, then I've got Alderman Baggett, then Alderman Barfield.
So first and foremost, it's great. I think it's not only, I'll just add a bullet to your list there, which I think for current residents even, it's a reminder about what our city is really about and a reminder of the great sites and frankly, a reminder of our commitment to those historic sites. So I think it has a broad application of a lot of good. So well done. My only question really is on the sites themselves. Was there or will the commission, probably more importantly, produce sort of a guidelines for how you're deciding which sites get noted, which sites get pulled out? If not already existing, that might be a very important addition.
We're certainly happy to look into that. Right now, we are assigning locations that are publicly accessible, that are pretty tourist-specific or local landmarks. And so we're hoping that, for example, with Eastern Flank, there are a couple locations right there at that site. We chose just to assign one to be very mindful of the regulations we have to follow in the number of characters we can even put on each sign. So as the program grows, that's something that Rich and I really should look into. We appreciate that comment.
Go ahead, Alderman Baggett.
Thank you, and I am proud to serve on this commission now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing that. A couple of things that I didn't know, because I'm new on the commission. On that commission, is you mentioned the levels, and the 1 through 3, and is the $45,000 for all 3 levels?
Yes, it is.
And City Administrator, is this something that could be used? I feel like the relief funds, didn't that allow for tourist type infrastructure for the relief funds? Or did we already have somewhere this budgeted?
This is actually included in the budget amendment that's
Tonight?
on tonight.
Okay.
So we're already shifting looking at dollars
mind.
that are available in the hotel motel tax. It might be eligible. We could always look at that
Well, no, it's
as an
a-
option,
it's already
but
budgeted.
we've got it kind of already set
So
for that
would
fund.
we then need to do the 3 levels or just do them all?
We had proposed the 3 in the case that the board decided to take this in a phased program. We certainly would appreciate and prefer
Get
to
it
do
done.
it all at one time.
I think my suggestion would be get it done. And the other thing to note is that I think is important. We have to make sure that we don't crowd our sidewalks downtown with signposts. And I think this commission took great care to make sure that I think are all of the signs downtown on existing or most. I think all of them are already on existing posts, right? Yes. So that was.
Yes, indeed.
I think it's important. And then also the Macklemore House is going to be receiving a sign. And Alma gave some good context of that at our last meeting. But I think it's great that we're doing this, and thank you. And thanks to the commission.
Well, Macklemore House gets, I think, 4 signs, actually. But one other thing about the prioritizing is that it not only talked about how we would phase it out, but it also gives the sign shop a priority on how they're installing the signs and that type of thing. So it was a worthwhile effort to do the prioritization.
Part of my question's already been answered, I think. The poles that you're mounting on, I mean, I hope I'm not the only one that thinks that they're very unattractive. And is it possible that you can upgrade those? I know that was part of the comment here, that you don't want to clutter up. But if you take the historic, the Lots House, the Carter House, all those, is it possible? Because there's got to be a better looking pole to match up, because these are really nice. And I'm just asking, is it possible to look at something like that? And it's not intended to hold up the program. If that's what it is what it is. But I don't think anybody would mind having something a little more attractive to mount those on.
We
So-
certainly agree with you, and we are actually proposing as part of that overall $45,000 cost to include new posts, and Rich can tell you more about how those look.
There are 2 categories of signs, if you will. There are those in the historic district of the city, and we're giving those signs the same priority that all signs in the historic district get. And we price that way. When you move out of the historic district, we termed them rural signs. They're in the city, so they're really not rural, but we had to have a term. And the sign that we propose for that is very much what the sign shop normally does, but it is a tube post that is mounted in the ground. It is powder coat painted, so it lasts. It will be Franklin green color. It has a finial on the top, and so it has some class to it, even in the rural sites. The sites are alongside the road, like Lewisburg Pike down toward, Goose Creek and that type of thing.
But that is in your 45,000?
Yes, sir.
That's good.
An important thing to us was to be very cognizant of the amount of time it would take to create these and to be very effective with the money that we're proposing to spend on it. So we took every effort to make sure that these could be made in-house so they could be very affordable.
And we've invested in having a really high-quality sign shop. They're able to produce really excellent signs, and not all cities have that. So this really is cost-effective, too, and they just do great work. So that stretches our dollars further, too.
Go ahead, Alderman
Yeah,
Berger.
real quick. So just help me out here a little bit. I'm trying to figure this out. Carrington, Collins, Eastern Flank, and the rest of them that are listed. The main historic thing, I think when I get off of Interstate 65, if I was looking to come and visit here, I would personally be looking for something that said historic downtown or historic Franklin Square or historic downtown, because that's our number 1 place that people visit is our square. And now with the Fuller Story, we sort of want to pull people to the square. We want to pull people to the downtown. So is there going to be any kind of sign at the interstate or any place that says historic downtown or historic Franklin? Because if I see these places, I'll go, oh, those are great, but I don't know where they are. And I wonder if they're close to downtown, if I'm coming in here and don't know.
Our terminology was historic district.
Yeah, that serves the purpose too.
Yes, and
Yeah.
for example, at 96, when you get off the highway,
Right.
there in the vicinity of, what is it, KFC, there will be a sign that says Historic District 2.5 miles or whatever it is. And then on all the signs into downtown, Historic District is one of those reinforced sites that is on that sign.
Yeah.
We're considering it a historic site as we would the others.
Yeah, I see that there's one that lists civil, on page 8, then you have one over here, it says downtown, Harlansdale Farm, and then, so, anyway, I was just thinking that most people do look for either historic downtown or historic districts, so district would work. Okay, thanks.
We had two major categories, and that was Civil War sites and Historic District. And outside of the downtown core, if you get in the vicinity of Carter House, of course, we direct you to the Carter House. But outside of that immediate vicinity, it was those two sites that we were pushing people to, and that was Historic District or Civil War sites.
I've got the vice mayor, and then I have Alderman Potts.
We're gonna make it a full house. So I just was curious. I would love to see the design for the visitor center. You talked about it being a blue, and you talked about it being a circle. But I'd love, and I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm on that board. But what the difference is, size comparison to the sign, what they look like. Franklin's color has long been blue traditionally. I understand that you call this brown. I will believe you. It looks
It's
burgundy.
a reddish brown, yes.
Okay.
It's in the vein.
So you talked about how many of the visitor center signs that were going to be?
There's 30 of them.
So that's a lot. I'd love to, I think that it'd be great for us to see what those look like as
Sure.
well.
I have it in
Yeah.
the plan that was submitted to you all. Now, the plan I know is kind of large. I could pull that up if you'd like, but essentially they're small medallions about this big. And they're the international blue color that was recommended by the Convention and Visitors Bureau with that italicized I that you're all
Sure.
familiar with. So that's essentially what will be added. And the reason that we're doing those added as opposed to on the sign is it does draw more attention.
I agree.
And it also allows us to have more information because we can only have 3 lines on the main sign, and our traffic engineer recommended using the decals. For
I think
visitor
it's great.
center.
I just would love to see it. And then lastly, I know we've got other trails, and I'm not talking about like CVB trails, but I mean, there's the one that starts in front of the Red House, and there's different things that have been established over the last decade. How do those compete, or are they a part of, we've got lots of different signages. Some signages where you're able to go and listen to, like the Toussaint L'Ouverture Cemetery, where you've got that through the Parks Department. I would love to know how many other signed programs that we have within the city. I think this is very important. I think it needs updating, and I'm all about it, but I'd love to know how we're competing or adding to existing signage programs, because sometimes you get too many cooks in the kitchen.
I absolutely agree. And when we started this process 2.5 years ago, it was because I did feel we needed an audit of all the signage we had. We actually, as the Civil War Historical Commission and the planning staff, work with the Parks Department to maintain the audio tour that you were talking about. So this would be separate from that, and we're actually looking to update those as one of our next projects. And we're very excited about that. This is primarily vehicular, with the exception of the ones on Main Street, which can be vehicular or pedestrian. So I don't believe they'll compete with the audio tours, which tend to be more of the ground-mounted signs that look like tabletops at the parks themselves. And as far as any walking tours, we're looking through to see what is still valid and not. A lot of those tour signs are very old and no longer correspond to any sort of actual tour, or there's just no longer literature associated with them, so someone would even know what those mean.
I
Quick
just think
comment,
that'd be
Alderman
helpful.
Potts. Quick comment, we need to keep moving on.
Well, as Brandy said, we'll do the full house, and I'll be real fast because actually a couple of them were already hit. But again, I wanted to just say hats off on this, as I love the interactive map component, and I'd really like to just say or ask, to see if y'all considered putting this out into whether it be Williamson County Schools and with the parks or with FSSD for increased exposure to families and to students, and just to get more people out to see all of these sites.
Well, we certainly plan to, once these are installed, have some literature online to associate with those, and in tandem with the audio tours that we already provide. So we would certainly be happy to share that information. I know we've taken a lot of your time today. You have other items on the agenda, so unless you have anything else, we're happy to close. Thank you so much. I do want to thank the subcommittee and Rich in particular for working so hard on this project with staff.
Thank you, Rich and Amanda. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go to items 8, 9, and 10. All three of these are acknowledgments of progress report on various plan of services that we've developed, and apparently this is a state requirement. I'll just let Amy go ahead with all three of those, if you would.
Thank you. And that is a perfect segue. I was going to briefly describe why I'm going to give you these reports periodically throughout the year. They are state law requirements that after 6 months of when an annexation has been approved and annually thereafter, we have to give these reports to report on the city's obligations and whether or not they've been fulfilled or not. So it's pretty simple because it's only the city's obligations, not the developers. And just for point of context, typically when we do write our plan of services, we write them such that the services must be extended as development occurs. It's not the expectation that services are necessarily there the first day, especially when it comes to water, sewer, extensions, things like that. And most of the time we do write that such that it's as development occurs and it's the obligation of the developer, not the city. So for the three we have, the first one is for two properties, 2208 Crossway Drive and 1190 Lewisburg Pike. It was annexed in April 13 of this year. It was in regards to the Tuckaway PUD, for those who remember that development plan. And at this time, the city has fulfilled any and all of its obligations, and so I will not be giving any more reports on this plan of service after we have the public hearing on the 11th. Any questions on that one? Perfect. Okay. The second one is for two properties. I have them as parcels, 80-1101 and 80-1205. These are properties along Clovercroft Road. These two properties were annexed in February of 2016. The last report I gave was last year on December 8th to the BAMA. At this time, the city has one outstanding obligation, which is to annex the frontage along Clovercroft Road. We don't have any plans for that yet. That was just how we wrote the plan of service back in 2016. And so I will continue to give this report until we have fulfilled that obligation. Any questions on that one? Okay. Yes. It's in front of what is to be the Parish Presbyterian Church. Mm-hmm. So, well, at the time, we thought that it would be imperative to annex that part of the road in front of those two properties. As we went through the annexation process, it's not something that we could annex. You had to get the property's owners, I guess, consent to do that. And we don't know if it's, I can't remember if it was the county's property or not, but it wasn't given to us. And so we're sort of stuck in limbo, quite honestly, about this portion of the road.
This is what I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Let's backtrack.
Sure.
Do me a favor. Call the county again. Double check, because I asked Rogers about that, and Eddie Hood told him, investigated it, came back to Rogers and said on that road, they do not own to the middle of the road. Specifically called me to tell me that. Now, I'm hearing something totally different again. And
Okay.
and the mayor mentioned that,
Who is they? The property owner or the county?
the property owners.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
I just want to make
So,
sure I know
yeah.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, when you say that the property owners own to the middle of the road,
Mhm.
it's not true on all roads, but.
Right.
So we were saying, hey, should we try to annex this road in, but then you
Mhm.
can't annex the property with it unless the people want to come in.
Mhm.
And I know the mayor mentioned that at one of the meetings and said, well, we talked about, Greg Lawrence had talked about that. But I'm not going to go into all that tonight, but I sure would like to nail that down because they're giving me a totally different message. Totally.
We can look
When
into
I
that.
specifically
Sure.
asked for the entire road from 96 to Wilson Pike.
Well, the obligation here is only the frontage
Yeah,
along this piece of property. So it's,
not
I
to
don't
the
know,
middle.
100 feet, 200 feet long.
And it's on the
And that would be the only thing
north
that we
side?
would be taking, north side, yes. So do you want half of a road annexed in?
Well, I don't understand why we can't annex that whole road in.
I mean, that might be part of the
I
bigger
mean-
Once
question,
you annex it,
but
you've incurred all the costs to upgrade it.
Yeah.
That's exactly
I mean, not
the
the
reason.
road, just that portion of it, because we own the portions. We, county, city, county, we own portions all up and down there. And the property right abutting that 10 acres is now city.
the parish
So why would it
Presbyterian
be?
property
Yes,
is
why would that be
city,
city
yes.
property now? And then that little buffer area is county, and then the road is county.
I mean, I
don't-
think
I
you're
don't
bringing
get
up questions
Let's
that
talk about
speak
it
to
later.
the larger
Well, I think,
Clovercroft Road
I don't want
project.
to, I don't want to
so-
go on because our time is limited
Yeah.
here, but we do need to, okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
Okay. Uh-huh.
It's a little complicated.
that one is, yes. It was unfortunate that we wrote it
Sorry
that way.
about that.
Okay, the third one is for 8 properties listed in your attached report. I won't go through all of them for the sake of time. The properties were annexed on June 22nd of this year. They are in association with the Southvale Development Plan that is on the west side of Lewisburg Pike. And at this time, the city has fulfilled all of its obligations as outlined in the plan of service. So there will be no other reports after the public hearing on the 11th. Any questions on that one? Okay.
Item number 11, report of the American Rescue Plan Act grant funds to the city of Franklin.
We wanted to just provide you with a fairly brief update of where we are with these funds, the status of them. We incorporated some assumptions in our existing budget around how those dollars might be allocated, but that guidance from the federal government continues to come out and evolve, and so we are giving you sort of a status report of what we've done thus far and what some of the elements appear to be, but it is still a developing plan as we learn more and as we look at what options best fit community needs and what's the most efficient way to use the dollars, because there's a lot of requirements and strings attached to certain types of functions, and we want to be mindful of making the most of these kind of one-time dollars and impacting the community. So Mike's going to walk us through that and really just give you sort of a status update, because we made certain assumptions in your budget, which are largely on target, but there's more that has been colored in on that over time. So Mike, take it away.
Good afternoon. What I would like to do with this item is kind of work through the slides, and it does give us what we know currently about the American Rescue Plan. If you look at page 2, it shows you that this act actually had $350 billion for state and local governments. Of that amount, $65 billion on page 3 was actually provided for local governments. And then of that amount, the city was allocated $9.2 million. And we actually, and this is going to actually be received over 2 payments. Back in May of 2021, we actually saw the first payment of $4.6 million. We do anticipate that in May of 2022, we will receive the second payment, also of $4.6 million. And one thing to just kind of point out is we are considered a metropolitan city. So we were actually one of 18 cities that actually got to request that money directly from the federal government, whereas most cities have to go through the state. So, and we actually made our request for the 4.6 million on the very first day it was available. On page 4, this is kind of what Eric alluded to about what was in the law. What was it supposed to provide for? And it actually had 4 different things. It said this money is to be used to help to respond to the public health emergency. It was to possibly provide premium pay to eligible workers. Third, government services due to reduction of revenue. And this will actually be discussed a little bit more because they kind of talk about revenue loss. So I'll actually talk about a little more about that category. And also, this money can be used for water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And that actually would include stormwater as well as reclaimed. So that fits within those 4 bullet points. And if you go to page 5, the potential uses that were included in the 2022 budget, because they were putting it together right after the law was passed. And in the 2022 budget, there were actually 4 things that were related to the American Rescue Plan. There was a $1,000 net premium pay that was funded in part by the grant. There was revenue replacement identified in the street aid fund because of less gasoline taxes. There was revenue replacement identified in the hotel motel tax fund because of lower hotel motel taxes that we were seeing. And $1 million was put into the budget for water and sewer projects. And these uses were developed from the best information we had at the time because the additional guidance did not come out until May of 2021. On page 26, or I'm sorry, page 6, if you look, and it's kind of Eric talked about is you started seeing how you could use it, but they also told you how you couldn't use it. So these were the bullet points of how we found out how they can't be used. It was talking about it can't reimburse expenses prior to March 3rd of 2021. It cannot make any contributions to a rainy day fund or other reserve funds. Essentially, it has to be spent. It cannot pay debt, and it cannot be deposited into a pension fund. It cannot be used to offset reduction in a net tax revenue, and it cannot be the non-federal match for a federal program unless it's specified. So those were the things we were learning from the additional guidance that came from the U.S. Treasury. The thing that I thought might be helpful for this presentation is what has been spent so far and when does it all need to be spent. At this point, we have paid the $1,000 net premium pay back in July. And there were 432 eligible employees, and that came out to be $661,000. The remainder of the employees were paid through budgeted non-grant funds. We are following the grant's reporting requirements. Like with any grant, there are reporting requirements, and we did report this amount when we had to do an interim report back in August. Of the first $4.6 million in funding we've received so far, this is the only thing that's been spent, so there is still a little less than $4 million at this point unspent. And the grant funds is something we also wanted to find out. They have to be obligated, which means they essentially contracted or awarded by December 31st of 2024 and spent by December 31st, 2026. And something about this grant that sometimes you don't have with grants is there is no local match. So that is different about this grant than some federal grants that you would receive. And going down to that category, I talked about revenue loss on page 8. And did the city have grant eligible revenue loss? And the answer was yes, because there was at one point when we compared what we got during the pandemic versus before. During the pandemic, we were actually still getting development revenue coming in. So we weren't necessarily sure at the beginning if we had revenue loss, So we went through the calculations, and it was determined that we did have revenue loss. One thing that was also unusual about this grant is we're on a fiscal year, July through June. We actually got to kind of, use that to help do the calculation, but they said other than using your pre-pandemic last fiscal year, you had to switch everything to calendar year. So we had to use 6 months of audited information, 6 months of unaudited information, and kind of put that together to come up to determine if we actually had revenue loss. On page 9, it was one that we wanted to determine what was that amount. So of the funds, the 9.2 million total, doing this initial calculation, we can use up to 7.5 million toward revenue replacement. And what that means is, well, actually, let me go over the calculation real quick, because what was also unusual about this grant is it said you had to use your total revenue. But then what happened was they started saying you could include certain things and exclude certain things. So what was funny is they said you can exclude federal revenue that you'd received in the past. So we had to make sure that got incorporated. They said to exclude water, but include sewer. And they said to exclude transit. So in essence, instead of letting us go through line by line, knowing that we had less gasoline tax and less hotel motel taxes, we had to go through this combined calculation, including and excluding various things. On page 10, what's the reason to determine if you have revenue loss? It goes to this category right here, is it tells you how you can spend the funds if it's actually based on revenue loss. And so far in that 2022 budget, we have identified $50,000 toward the street aid fund. We've identified $1,150,000 to the hotel motel tax. So that's currently in your 2022 budget. And on page 11, and it's kind of maybe how I might just end the presentation, is if it's not revenue loss, how can it be used? So these are the other potential areas. It can be used toward a water sewer project, and we do know the budget rate has $1 million. It can be used for premium pay, which we did do back in July. We can use it for public health, and that means like the COVID sick pay that the board has been discussing. If it goes after March 3rd of 2021, that beginning point, it appears to be an eligible use as well. And it also can be for two other categories. It can be used for negative economic impacts, and it can be used for services to certain impacted communities. So that's kind of what we've been able to compile at this point. And I think maybe Christine or Eric, did y'all have maybe any follow-up to that information?
I mean, it's still evolving. We have the basic plan that was in the budget. We have really 3 budgets to spread it over and look at. So we're still looking at those options, and we'll bring forward to you. Most likely as a component of the new budget we begin to develop after the first of the year, what some of that looks like. We have identified some things in our budget process. We'll probably identify some more. There may be some available partnerships. Of course, we guided the COVID CDBG money out towards public service agencies, nonprofits in the community. That's been good, but we're looking at the right fit and match for these dollars as well. So more to come on this, but we wanted to give you kind of the snapshot of where we are and what we know, and it continues to be something that will evolve and that you'll see reflected in upcoming budget discussions.
Alderman Berger?
Could you look on, it's right there on page 11. It says, can use for negative economic impacts. Well, the impacts, all of it's negative, so that's like an open-ended,
When you look at areas that you can target and demonstrate, one of the areas we're looking at in particular is tourism, hospitality
Okay.
industries were hit particularly hard. That's why the initial budget had that
Yeah.
component to sort of make up some of the revenue loss in hotel motel. We're looking at how we partner with Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Yeah,
There may
that's
be some other
obvious.
specific projects that have a tourism benefit that we will bring forward for you to consider.
Okay, so, you know, this looks so broad, but it said anything that was exasperated by public health emergency for economic harm. I mean, it's sort of open-ended, but I think one of our big things is to, because we're such a tourist-heavy
Right.
area, that would be the obvious.
When you look at those occupancy drops and
Yeah.
average daily rate
Hotel,
drops and all those very
terrible, yeah.
demonstrable, and we have gradually gotten better, but we're still not back to where we were. So there are, that seems to be a pretty strong target area, makes a lot of sense. So that's one of the areas we're focusing on, and you'll see some other opportunities too.
Thanks.
And that is one of the challenges with the guidelines, is that with negative economic impacts, it directly states, and tourism and hospitality is something that's actually stated, whereas there's some language that is more implied. And so we do like that it states tourism and hospitality, and that's one of the reasons that we like that it states that.
Yeah, because it's a much bigger help to us then. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, I see you waving down
I
there.
know. I've had a hard time getting your attention tonight, but it's okay. I'm waiting my turn. So,
Your Alderman Potts is such a distraction down there.
no, hey, compared to Dana, he's like milquetoast. So, not to say, I mean, I miss Dana, but you're a great seatmate. On page number 7, the very first bullet, explain the math on that. 432 people got $1,000, and it's not 432,000. We're saying it's 661.
Well, the total cost to the city was the 661.
For
And-
432 eligible employees.
Well, we had
She
to,
said it's-
well, wait, the six,
Look, read that sentence and tell me
What-
what's wrong.
well, we
with it.
had to pay, so people got $1,000 on their check, we had to
Correct.
pay more than that.
Okay.
Okay, so we
Might
had
need
to
a little
net that
asterisk
out,
there.
yeah. But we
FICA
did pay, everyone got the $1,000. Only those that were in the eligible categories, which are more frontline employees, were able to be charged to the recovery dollars. So we distinguished it in that way. And so we made it up, though, because we thought it was important for everybody on our city team to get that benefit. But we wanted to be clear with how they defined what was an eligible use of these dollars, and then filled the void with city, local dollars for the rest of the way.
But yes, for those checks to be at $1,000, the actual expense was greater. For example, payroll taxes, and
Almost that
we-
much more.
we had to net out
Okay. Do you understand why it's like, wait a
Yes,
minute,
yeah.
if you have to like slide that
Yeah.
to the government, they might want a little bit more explanation. Because I mean, you know, thank you.
We ready to go to the ward alderman maps?
I don't think that's right.
Item 12, discussion regarding ward boundary maps, updates, rather.
I will kick this off, and this is the start of a discussion. One of the things we are required to do every 10 years after we get the federal census is to look and update our wards so that we roughly balance the population among the wards. This provides for an equal vote and equal representation for our residents. So this is something we do in the wake of the federal census. And so we've gotten that information, and we wanted to reflect on that with you, with at least an initial option for you to react to, respond to. We're not under a real specific deadline, especially because I think our only deadline is a certain period of time before the next time we have ward elections. So we've got a lot of time. So, but we might as well knock it out and go with these numbers and figure it out when you all are comfortable. But there you see the existing ward map. And the numbers, as you look at population, all the wards grew. but some grew more than others, especially Ward 3 grew significantly. Ward 1 grew as well. Like I said, all grew, but those two in particular, especially Ward 3, grew pretty significantly in this 10-year period. And one of the other things we looked at, just from a perspective, was what might make sense too. When you look at this existing ward map, you see these sort of almost like choke points in Ward 2 and in Ward 4, where there's these really narrow areas and then it expands out. And we tried to look at, are there ways to balance the population but also make it sort of fit a little better geographically. So we looked at that component, and we also looked at what are some logical boundaries that might make sense, easy to understand in terms of major roadways. Also tried to make sure neighborhoods stayed together, all of those kind of considerations. So there's obviously a million ways you could slice this if you want to. But we wanted to give you a first cut at it and to respond to, and let's pull that next option up, and that shows you the hashed areas that are the areas of change. So, for example, in Ward 2, you've got a component that comes from Ward 1 over to Ward 2 on the east side, and then more in the central area, you see an area moving from Ward 4 to Ward 2. Then we also made... Yeah, with Liberty Pike as a boundary. So then we also adjusted, of course, with Ward 3's growth. A lot of that shifted up into Ward 4, make that a little more reflective of kind of the downtown and the kind of core neighborhoods there, as well as running down Columbia Avenue as a boundary in that area. And then the only other small adjustment we made on the far east on Ward 1 was just using Murfreesboro Road as a boundary. That's really only a few hundred, but we moved that little hashed area that you see on the far east, into Ward 3. Again, just the logic of having Murfreesboro Road be a clear line, but all of these are options for you. So that's a rough discussion of it. We tried to hit a way to balance it better. Would welcome any input you have. We can certainly bring this back at another work session after the first of the year to look at some other ideas and options. But the key thing is to get it balanced somewhere in the mid 20,500 to 21,000 range is about where you want to be, so that you've got roughly equal representation of those wards for the folks voting and selecting their representation from the ward aldermen. We do work with the comptroller's office, who provides some oversight on this and would report this into their office. We met with representatives from the comptroller's office, and just got some feedback from them, and they're very comfortable with the approach we're taking. But again, we got some time to figure out where we want to be. So I'll stop there and take any comments or feedback you want to provide.
I think we'll have just a very limited discussion because we've got to turn this over.
Yeah.
So Alderman Berger.
My only thing is, there's a couple things. You come down on my ward there on the pink side, up there, starting up there where the 8 is, or 6 is on 65.
Mm-hmm.
Come down there, and then you see that little jetted out green diagonal space. That's at Cold Springs. That's where Carrabba's is, right there. I don't think it goes into that area. I don't think there's any residents there. Honestly, if you look at that, there are no residents there at all. So it just looks odd that when we did this before, that we cut that out and put that in Ward 2. I just thought for flowability, it should probably all be cut off right there at Mallory. And it's cut off now, Mallory to Cool Springs. And so if you come at a diagonal and just go from Mallory to Cool Springs and go north and northwest.
I thought that was East McEwen. It's
No.
not?
I did too. That's North.
I think that's East
I think that's the McEwen area.
It is.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, when I looked it up, it was McEwen, I thought.
I think it is McEwen.
Okay, where is that? Right here? Okay, so you're taking that out? So is that north side McEwen?
Yes, ma'am.
I believe so.
You're taking that out?
Mm-hmm.
Why would they take that out?
It's numbers, it's population. You got the apartments there. It's just looking at numbers of population and trying to
Yeah, there's
balance it
there's
out.
apartments, but they're, I think, okay, but then on the south side of
So both
McEwen-
1 and 3 are going to have to go down for this to
All right,
work.
so that just cuts into that.
Leaves 4.
Yeah, I know, I'm not.
I'm
saying-
going
okay,
to move
and-
you along,
all right,
Alderman Berger,
the only
if you
other thing I would say-
Otherwise, we'll never
The only
get
other thing I
anybody
would
else's
say,
comments.
absolutely, is Arnold Road. That spot down there on the yellow that's colored in right there. If you, Ward 3 is gonna grow. You're gonna get a heck of a lot more people in Ward 3, Jason. So, you're about ready to explode and get a whole lot more. So I was wondering, just FYI, when you look at this on Arnold Road, as you come down to Arnold Road, I would think that coming down there, everything to the east, you would want to put in 1, unless you want to grab everything to the east of Arnold and everything else down in Paynesville and all the explosion that's coming there. So I was just saying, if we're going to balance out numbers, if we're not looking today.
You have to look today.
Well, I
That's
mean,
the
we're
challenge.
looking today, but
We
that's.
can't project out. We
you're
have to
not-
go
you're
with what
gonna-
we
You're
have.
not going to add very many numbers right there today. on
I'm
Arnold
going
Road.
to stop the
Anyway.
discussion if I could.
Sure.
I'm going to give Alderman Baggett just a very quick ability to make a comment. I'm going to suggest that each ward alderman who this affects come in and work with staff and make
Yeah,
your
I don't know- I don't know
comments
what to
and,
do.
because I don't think we're going to get where we want to be.
I'll see what we have on that.
I won't make my comments now, but I think this, and I would appreciate coming one-on-one with staff, but I also think this is important enough for us to have some prolonged discussion together, because I think I'd like to hear what everyone else has to say, and there's probably some solutions that we can hash out together, but we do need to at some point, prioritize this at a board or a work session.
Okay.
And I'll reserve my comments to then.
The other thing I can send you, I just got this last week, is there is a story map version of this that might be a little more descriptive that GIS folks developed that I'll send out to you.
How about item 13, which is the 2022 calendar of Board of Mayor and Alderman and committee meetings?
Let me make one addendum to this. With budget and finance, we've had some discussions on how to manage that schedule. We're looking at starting that at 3 o'clock, but when we get into budget season, so really February, March, and April are very busy times. There's a lot of content to work through as the departments present their budget requests and their overview. One of the suggestions that our chairman, Alderman Barnhill, made was to look at in February, March, and April to do 2 meetings. So there'd be 2 2-hour meetings as opposed to 1 4-hour meeting, because quite frankly, that's normally what happens. So in February, we'd look at second Thursday and third Thursday as a 3 o'clock meeting. In March, we would do a back-to-back Wednesday and Thursday 2-hour meetings because of spring break. And then April would be second and third Thursdays as well, 3 o'clock, 3 to 5 roughly. And those, so you'll have extra meetings, but they'll be in about a 2-hour window, which will be probably better for our attention span and, and concentration anyway. So if that works for you all, and I've talked to each of the committee members, that seemed to be a viable option for them, we'd adjust this schedule to reflect that approach, and that'll get us through the budget sessions a little better and not have to go as long at one time, but meet more frequently, but for briefer meetings.
I see thumbs up. We'll see you in about 15 minutes.